Hello and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk, episode 33. Wow, we're climbing up there. My name is Trevor, Hooth, Transaction Trevor, and of course I'm joined by Trade and Nate Kosher. Nate, how you doing?
I couldn't be doing better as we close out 2024, Trevor.
The
Um,
holidays brought gifts.
yes, we got some baseball gifts
We
around
did both
the
of us.
holidays. Yeah,
Both of us did.
awesome stuff.
Yours seems significantly better, but but both of our teams were out there being active and I guess selfishly, I'll start with my team. Glaber Torres is going to be a Detroit Tiger, and that is interesting for a lot of reasons. My immediate reaction, I'm sticking with it, is the Tigers lineup was very inexperienced, and now it's more experienced at bare minimum. I think he makes the lineup better, but if you disagree, because I know people think his offense may not hold up, but um, bare minimum, they get more experienced and it's a 1 year deal. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad 1 year deal. So I like it. I think it's good. I have other thoughts about, especially about how it's going to make things play out in that lineup. But Nate, what do you think about that? Gleyber Torres heading to the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on those points. I didn't even consider the experience necessarily. I was just thinking about he's pretty good offensively, and he shores up maybe some questions in their infield, which we were talking about before we recorded this last week or whenever that was.
Mhm.
But that was the first thing that came to mind. But I think he'll hold up offensively. I mean, he was a bit down last year, but on a normal year, you could probably count on him for 20 home runs, about 60 RBI. He's not the best player out there, but a nice pickup on a 1 year deal. And as you said, someone who has playoff experience and has played in the hardest place you can play in.
Yeah, for sure. And with Gleyber Torres, he might take a hit offensively and fantasy value wise because Comerica Park is a lot worse to hit in than Yankee Stadium. I mean, that's just a fact. If you look at all of Nick Castellanos' doubles when he got traded away from Comerica, that they turned into home runs at Wrigley, it's kind of the same effect at Yankee Stadium. So he may not get the counting stats to be as fantasy relevant, but in terms of like real life baseball for the Tigers, I do like it a lot. It's going to be interesting to see how the infield plays out. So as it stands right now, um, Gleyber Torres is probably going to play second base pretty much every day, close to every day. So that's going to push Colt Keith over to first base, which makes a really hard spot to find for Spencer Torkelson. This
Hmm.
also might affect Jace Young, who as of right now you could probably count on as everyday third base or close to everyday third base. I don't really know. There's going to be a lot of moving parts in that lineup. There always is because AJ Hinch is AJ Hinch, but there's going to be some moving parts happening in that lineup. But when you're getting a guy who, as you said, has offensively been pretty good, and he looked at the offers he was getting and said, "I think I'm worth more. I want my agents to look for a 1 year deal." He has said that out loud. He wanted his agents to find a 1 year deal so he can prove himself and get a big contract after this season. So he's definitely going to be trying to play a little extra hard. That doesn't always necessarily translate to anything. There was an opt out for Javi
Yeah.
Baez that we all thought would make him bounce back that he did not hit. So I don't know. I like it for the Tigers lineup. Helps them defensively. It's going to be really interesting. Might wind up with Colt Keith being eligible for second and first base over the course of a
Hmm.
fantasy season. So that's something interesting to watch out for. And the Tigers may not be done. I keep seeing them linked to Alex Bregman, and that's really interesting. I don't know that I love it. I haven't been a huge fan of bringing Bregman in this whole time, but it's like Torres, where he will bring in more experience and he'll make the lineup better, unquestionably, at least in the early part of the deal. I know they were hesitant to spend money. I don't know what the years would look like, but I think they still might be in on Alex Bregman, which is super interesting, and that would definitely put a wrench in any plans you have for Jace Young in 2025.
Yeah, it's going to be sort of a domino effect. And as you said with Torkelson, I mean, we were talking about him a few weeks ago. I had traded for him in my dynasty league, and he could be either platooned or bumped completely,
Out. Yeah.
right? If he if
Mhm.
he can't hit, if he
Yep.
doesn't hit, I guess. So that's very interesting, and it makes you think the Tigers must have some doubts if they were willing to bring in Torres. That doesn't affect Torkelson directly, but how that will affect the rest of how the infield shifts. And yeah, now I may be thinking I need to move him in my dynasty league.
Yeah, I think it might just be a sunken cost for me at this point. So I traded Shea Langoliers and I got Spencer Torkelson in a fourth. And it might just be a sunken cost of I don't even keep Torkelson now. Just because
Yeah, right.
I don't know if he's going to get at bats, or I don't know if his at bats are going to be good enough for him to continue to have a role. So I think I maybe would rather take a chance on him in our auction that comes up later. But I think I might just take a sunken cost and have traded Shea Langoliers for a fourth round pick. I think I have to at this point, just because I
Yeah,
think I have other guys who I would keep better. And oh man, I don't like that, but I think it's about where I'm at because I am looking at my team and I need to get rid of some people to hit the keeper threshold. So um, Spencer Torkelson might actually be one of them. So I don't love it, but is what it is at that point. Now I know that I'm guessing it was Glaber Torres that made you so happy. That's why
that is yeah
that was it. All right,
I
so we're gonna
that's
end the
kept me up at
podcast.
night.
Thanks for listening. No, so if you're new to Coffee Talk, Nate's favorite team is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And if you're not new to
That's
baseball and
right.
know who to follow on Twitter, you've seen that the Arizona Diamondbacks have been busy. They made a good trade and they made a good signing. We'll start with the signing. Corbin Burns is an Arizona Diamondback. Nate, how do you feel?
Well, I was just putting the finishing touches on my 2025 World Series champs T-shirt order here online. No, not to get too cocky, but uh, that blew me out of the water. I mean, totally out of left field. I never even knew the Diamondbacks were in on Burns, and they must have kept it under wraps pretty well because I didn't see it anywhere. And we had talked about free agents a few weeks ago,
Caught a lot of people off
and
guard, I feel like.
yeah, I don't think anyone saw this coming. And it shows you the D-backs are serious, even though they missed playoffs last year by one game tiebreaker at the end of the year. Um, it shows you they definitely think they have the team that can make a run. He can opt out after 2 years. Speaking of opt outs, so the 6 years, 210 million. It's not that insane for what we've seen on the free agent market. And Burns is, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if it doesn't work out after 2 years, he could be out himself, and then they're not stuck, with the huge contract. But I couldn't believe it. It's awesome. Let's go. I'd like the season to start right now. And speaking of domino effect, their starting rotation is now it's usually a good problem. You can't have too many starters, but they are a little bit in a surplus now. And so I had seen before they weren't wanting to move Zach Gallen. That I think it's possible that now he could move. But if they don't make any changes, they'll have Burns, Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brennan Fott, and then Ryan Nelson, who is pretty good, Eduardo Rodriguez, who was injured most of the year, and they still have Jordan Montgomery, their disaster of a contract from last season. So I think they're looking to move him, but that's a pretty solid rotation, Trevor. And I mean that gets you. Burns is the type of guy he can. You get into the playoffs and you're like, okay, we're gonna win this game. We have a true ace, and pair that with the Diamondbacks offense. It's awesome. I didn't expect it at all, but yeah, really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Burns for a second, but I'm also looking on top of that rotation. if you're trying to make a run at it, you have Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, Kevin Ginkel, Ryan Thompson. That's a good bullpen. I mean, you have options for who you want to go to late in games that you feel pretty confident with.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Martinez has showed great stuff, and they sort of gave him the closer role at the end of the year. He still walks too many people, probably. It's been an issue for him. But if you can get that under control, I could see him being a lockdown closer. They have the good setup men, as you said. So I think they're still looking as far as potentially more moves to make. They still want to get some power in their lineup because they lost Jock Peterson as he left. Well, he was a free agent. He signed with the Rangers,
Mhm.
and he actually had a really nice season last year. And he platooned and would start half the games with oh, what's his name? Randall Grichuk.
Mhm.
So they lost that sort of platoon that was a solid power. So I think they're still looking to shore up that loss, and then they also want to, I think, still get another relief arm. But I mean, they're right there, and they had to make that move, I think, to even feel like they can keep chasing the arms race that is the NL West. Uh, it still doesn't mean they're going to beat out the Dodgers, but it's awesome. It gives them a chance. Knock on wood, everything goes according to plan.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this hitting side then. The Diamondbacks did trade to bring in some power. Uh, guy who had 31 home runs last year. That's not that many, but it's some. Um, I'm kidding. That's very good, right? They traded for Josh Naylor.
Yeah,
You bring Josh Naylor in, and all you give up is Slade Ciccone and a competitive balanced round B pick. Seems like a really good trade, especially for a team that, as you mentioned, is trying to make a push for it right now. Especially, you're losing Christian Walker, so now it looks like you replaced your everyday first baseman.
yeah, exactly. And they, as you said, they didn't have to give up much. Slade Ciccone had his chances. He struggled at the major league level, and so trading him, what we were just talking about, they're not short of starters, so I think that's fine. I think it was a great trade for them. Naylor is not as good of a defender as Christian Walker. Walker won, I think he's won 3 straight Gold Gloves or 3 out of the last 4 or 5 years. So on the defensive side, still not quite at that level, but Naylor much younger, um, just as good as power stats, and he, based on what the market was, I don't think the Diamondbacks wanted to pay Christian Walker to come back,
Mhm.
and so yeah, that was also, if that just that happened, them getting Naylor in that trade, I would have been happy with the offseason and maybe them grabbing one more relief arm. But yeah, I almost forgot about it with with the Burns signing. But Josh Naylor's a good player. He was an All-Star last year, and um, I would think hopefully he can keep it up. Since taking over in the majors, he has 84 home runs in 3 seasons, basically. So that's pretty good.
Mhm. So here's a question for you. Being a Diamondbacks fan, having seen Slade Ciccone pitch and all that, with him going to the Guardians, who is a organization known for helping pitchers get better, are you interested in Slade Ciccone? I mean, for this is a redraft podcast, so in 2025.
Yeah, that's a good question, um, because that is probably one of the best teams for developing pitchers. Probably one of the best places for him to end up, really. And he was, if you remember, this was the 2020 draft, I think, and he has some pedigree. I mean, he was drafted. Let's see, I need to look this up.
He was a
33rd
first round
overall.
pick, or yeah, just right after
Yeah,
the first round. Yep.
yeah. So I think that it's not that he can't be good or like the ship has sailed. He struggled, but he has a good fastball slider. Um, he wasn't striking out that many people when he was with the Diamondbacks as he had previously. But I don't think in a redraft league I would be interested in him. Perhaps in a dynasty league, a deeper situation. But they could turn him around. Maybe he'll end up, who knows, a reliever. Maybe he'll be a good reliever someday. But I don't. Not next year.
So
I'm not.
avoid
I'm not taking him.
avoid in drafts, but maybe a fab guy in the as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if he shows enough, and he's tutored, and maybe he figures some things out, it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
All right. So I think I agree. I think that's a good way to sum that all up because I'm interested anytime a pitcher goes to the Guardians, but you don't necessarily need to jump at him until you see the changes being made, unless there's like some crazy reports coming out and the hype starts to build. Then you might have to draft him if you want him.
Right.
Um, but I agree. I think that's good. I'm also just kind of shocked that the most moved position it seems like right now is first baseman. I know that the Diamondbacks got theirs, right? They traded for Josh Naylor, and then like 20 minutes after that was announced, then Carlos Santana is announced heading back to Cleveland, where he started his career. Josh Bell has signed with Washington. Washington also traded for Nathaniel Lowe. Paul Goldschmidt went to the Yankees. Christian Walker went to Houston.
Yeah.
Just a, I,
And crazy.
I didn't even know there were this many first basemen in the league. My goodness. And that doesn't even count the fact that Anthony Rizzo and Pete Alonso, among a couple others, are still out there. Somebody could still sign them and get some quality talent, especially with Pete Alonso. You're getting some high quality, elite level power for who knows what the cost is going to be, but he's got
Yeah.
to go back to the Mets at this point, I think.
That that's exactly what I was going to say. It's funny because I feel like first baseman, uh, they used to be maybe even more prestigious. Like they were the guys jacking 50 home runs, and it was like maybe mid 90s to early 2000s. Everyone had. Uh,
Steroids?
yeah, well, yeah, that's probably part of it too. But I think the first baseman has dropped. I don't know. They don't seem at that same level anymore. Maybe I'm just imagining that. But anyways, yeah, I think Alonso, he's the way the market's played out, perhaps actually hurt himself as far as money or trying to get the biggest contract because all of these other moves and teams filling their first base spots, where else is he going to go? I would
Dodgers.
expect Dodgers, maybe the Orioles. I mean, they keep saying they're going to do something, and they're in the "we tried" camp, with the Blue Jays, where they're interested in every free agent. But
Right. I
yeah,
say Dodgers is a joke, by the way, because they're just in on everyone.
they could afford it, I'm sure. But
Pete
I
Alonso
think
gets $700 billion deferred until
2150.
they have deferred so much money. We'll talk about that too. But real quick, right before we go to break, of the guys that I mentioned, so Walker to Houston, Goldie to the Yanks, Santana to Cleveland, Naylor to Arizona, Bell to Washington, Lowe to Washington. Do you see anybody's fantasy stock taking a leap or like their value
Yeah.
going up because of their new place, their new home?
Well, Goldschmidt is interesting because he struggled last year, but just like 2 seasons ago, he was the MVP,
Mm-hmm.
probably a future Hall of Famer. Going to the Yankees, playing in a great lineup with protection around him. That is actually interesting to me. Maybe if you're in a redraft league and you're waiting, uh, and you don't have a first baseman, take a flyer on him,
Mm-hmm.
middle to late of rounds of the draft. That is intriguing to me. Um, None of the other things are that interesting. I mean, Christian Walker is good. He'll probably
I
still
was
be
gonna
good, but
say, yep, I'll
yeah,
take Walker to Houston. I'm very interested.
he's
Absolutely.
he still has some gas left in the tank as compared to Goldschmidt. I like, I guess, the Goldschmidt as kind of a value pick. If you were to wait and he's available, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's probably Walker. Walker, then Goldie.
Yeah. So Walker, just because he's right-handed and he has the Crawford's boxes now. I mean, I'm sure he could stand to pull the ball a little more. Houston might want him to just pull the ball in the air, but he could maximize on some power when he's at home because he has the Crawford boxes as a right-handed hitter. Same reason that we like Isaac Paredes heading to Houston.
True. Oh yeah, that's right. He was there too. So
Third.
he'll be at third base because he's
Walker will
kind of
play
a
first.
first
Yep.
and third, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I imagine that's what the plan is. We are going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, I just saw that as we're recording, Alden Gonzalez tweeted something about Roki Sasaki, so I'll probably read that off. And some more free agent talk. That's going to be coming up in just a moment. Nate Kosher, Trevor Hooth here. You are listening to Coffee Talk as part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. Of course, Nate Kosher joining me. We talked about all the fun signings that our teams have done. Other teams apparently have been busy too, doing stuff. I did mention that as we're recording, news about Roki Sasaki coming out from Alden Gonzalez. Not the news we want. You don't know where he's going, but according to Alden Gonzalez, Roki Sasaki's agent Joel Wolf said 20 teams initially reached out with interest on his client, sending recruiting presentations and videos, and some of them even sent books. And at the moment, Sasaki is back in Japan and pondering next steps with his family, which could include narrowing the field, adding to the handful of meetings he's already had. And all of the initial meetings were in LA. I don't think you need to read into that. But it says, interestingly, Roki Sasaki asked that no players attend initial meetings per his agent. So he is wanting to make the decision based on where a team is at. It's been talked about that he doesn't mind a small market. So he might not go to the Dodgers. That's weird.
Yeah, that is. So that was. I had read that too about the small market thing, and I was actually going to mention that in my follow up because when I had heard that a while ago, I thought, well, maybe the Diamondbacks have a chance just because that would be exciting. But that piece of information is very interesting because so he doesn't want to be swayed by Shohei because everyone's saying it's going to be the Dodgers.
Right. The Dodgers would bring Shohei and Yamamoto into a meeting, and the Orioles would bring Sagano if he's around, right? Like they'll bring the players that they believe can connect and help recruit them
sway them to their
and
team.
by the way, I only say it's weird that the Dodgers may not win it because again, they're the Dodgers and they've gotten anybody they've wanted in the last few years. But it just opens up a very interesting path for Sasaki that he could wind up anywhere, that he could wind up with the Diamondbacks if they were one of the 20 teams in in that initial meetings. It could be the Tigers. I'm just saying it could be the Tigers. Chris Fetter. That's all I'm saying. Chris Fetter. He's a guy. He's there. It could happen.
The Padres, I think, are probably in the mix.
Mm-hmm. I've heard the Padres heavy. Not that there's a favorite yet, but I've seen that connection with the Padres a lot.
Yeah, I've been reading that as well. You'd have to think because the Orioles didn't get Burns, they would be in supposedly.
You imagine the Dodgers are still probably in. I would say the Angels are still probably in. If he wants to stay on the West Coast, he might go to the Cubs. He might go to the Tigers, like I mentioned. He could really. I honestly don't have any good feel where he's going to end up.
It's interesting to think about. Let's cross out all the major markets then. If he did want to be in a small market, like where would it be? Where would most likely he would join? Where they
San Diego.
Yeah. I guess that's
random dark horse that I've seen nothing and no connections to, but Pittsburgh. That would be interesting.
That would be crazy.
I'm only saying that because I'm just thinking of a world where there's Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, and Roki Sasaki in the same rotation. That's kind of fun.
I mean, if the Rays, I feel like their future's kind of murky, but it would be cool. Like all of a sudden, latches on with the Rays, but I don't know. It will probably be one of the prestigious big teams.
We're going to keep telling ourselves that. Just I don't know. It could be anybody until we hear that he's narrowed it down. I guess that's what he might be in the process of doing now. Anyway, other signings that happened. If we want to talk about the Dodgers and how they just, I don't know, get whoever they want. Teoscar Hernandez is heading back to the Dodgers, which there are a few interesting ramifications for me from that. It is more deferred money. I don't know exactly how much off the top of my head, but I think you got 3 years and then a handful of that money is deferred to later. But I mean, he had a good year last year, obviously, with the Dodgers. So are you still in on Teoscar Hernandez in a Dodgers uniform?
Yeah, I think so. What's interesting is he actually bet on himself last offseason,
Mm-hmm.
and how we were talking about Gleyber Torres, and it actually worked for him because now he signs a 3-year deal after he had a 1-year deal last year, and he did pretty good. He's a good player. He had a career high in home runs last year. He hit 272, 33 home runs, and 99 ribbies. I guess it would be hard to think he's going to do quite that good again next year. But he's a good player. I kind of think, I don't remember our predictions when we talked about free agents if we selected a spot for him, but I was thinking he was going to go back to the Dodgers. This isn't surprising, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would have had him to the Mariners if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Oh, because he had been there
yeah, I
before.
don't know
Yeah.
why. I think I just guessed and I was probably wrong. So it's 3 years. Well, I am definitely wrong because he didn't go there. He went back to the Dodgers. But 3 years, 66 million is what the contract is. There is a club option of 15 million for 2028 with 6.5 million buyout and 23.5 million of the deal is in deferred money. So the Dodgers are just paying people in 10 years. I mean, it's insane, but they're, I mean, hey, it's a good strategy like we talked about if it works. So he's back in LA. I think the biggest thing that does for me is puts a question mark on Dalton Rushing. Um, because it looked like
Oh, yeah.
he was going to get an everyday spot in the outfield, and he still might. But I think Teoscar coming back kind of puts a wrench in that, at least for now. Uh, which it would have been awesome to have his catcher and outfield eligibility for next season because he is a catcher primarily still. He just started getting reps in the outfield last year, and it looked like he would be back in the outfield for this year. But um, I don't know, between Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, Teoscar Hernandez, um, Andy Pajes is still going to matter.
Oh, yeah, I
We still
forgot
have
about him.
still have James Outman. So there's just quite a bit of outfielders there, which
That's
makes it
pretty
hard to
busy.
believe Dalton Rushing. I mean, they're the Dodgers. This is what happens. You can't really trust their prospects. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is what does that do for Dalton Rushing? And I don't think it's very good things for his value.
Agreed. Yeah, if he could keep his catcher eligibility, obviously that would be a huge boost for him. But I don't think he's not gonna get a chance at catcher.
No,
That's the
Will Smith
thing.
exists.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it would have had to be the outfield. So I think his value definitely takes a hit, especially in redraft leagues.
Mhm.
Maybe you're taking a flyer and hoping, he's a prospect. It's someone you're looking late with a high upside, but now that might not happen. He's their top prospect. He's the Dodgers' top prospect too, if I'm not
Should
mistaken.
be, yeah,
So
just proximity wise and stuff too. I know they have
yeah,
DePaula, but should be rushing, yeah, especially for redraft leagues. Now,
right.
speaking of outfielders, we talked a lot about Juan Soto. Can't imagine why, but we spent a lot of time talking about Juan Soto. Um, After his huge
We
contract, we
did.
talked about what he could look like at the end of it, and one of our listeners gave us Manny Ramirez stat line at age 36, where he hit 37 home runs, 121 RBIs, uh, slashed 332, 430, 601. A couple other stats here, but it was a good, I mean, This was 654 plate appearances too. This wasn't just a handful of plate appearances. So age 36, good season. Manny Ramirez did that. Juan Soto, I may be able to have something like that as he's 36, which would still leave 5 years left in his contract. But yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. Thanks for that comment from Forrest Dupree is the name here. So
Absolutely.
we appreciate that. And
And a
that
really
is
good comp, I
interesting.
think.
Yeah, it is. Manny was also, historically strong hitter.
Mhm.
Um, one of the all-time best, I think. When you put up all the stats, if you throw out the PED stuff and questions about that, he was insane, insanely good hitter. He has his on base percentage in his career is 411. So the on base comp is there, and if he can be good that long, perhaps Soto could too. And I was curious. I just looked at the year after that. In age 37, he played 104 games for the Dodgers and still managed 19 home runs, 63 RBIs, and hit 219 with the 418 on base percentage. So
How many teams did he end up playing for? Do you have that up right now?
I do. He ended up playing for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
5. Okay, so putting myself on the spot instead of you this time.
see if you can do this. Yes.
So obviously the Red Sox.
Yep.
I believe you just mentioned the Dodgers, right?
I said the
Okay.
Dodgers, so
So
I gave
there's
you that.
one. Tampa Bay
Yep.
is another one. Um, I have absolutely no idea for these two. I'm going to have to just throw out a guess.
One is not obvious, and one you should be able to remember, or it's more obvious. I'll say that
Are they AL or NL teams?
they're both AL teams.
Both AL teams. Um, let's see. I'm going to get it. I'm not going to get it, but we're going to pretend I'm going to get it. We're going to support me through this. Randomly, the Guardians.
Yes,
Yes, I thought I remembered that.
that's where he started his career.
Okay, and then was that the obvious one that I should have gotten, or
Yes, yeah, that was the one I was putting as
White
obvious.
Sox?
There you go.
Did I get all 5?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
you
those
got
last
White
two.
Sox.
Those last two were just guesses. I really just based on things that I thought I remembered.
His
Awesome.
end of his career, he would played 24 games for the White Sox, and then the
Wow.
following year he played for the Rays. But I want to call out in 1999. So he was just about as good in Cleveland as he was in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
In 1999, he had 165 runs batted in.
Wow.
That's insane. And Cleveland had some good. They had some good teams in there,
Mm-hmm.
and some good lineups. But wow, and he was third in the MVP race. That's crazy. 165 ribbies. What a massive year.
Good player.
Yeah, he was a good player. So appreciate that comp, and I think Yankees fans would be probably even more angry if they found out the comp for Soto is Manny Ramirez.
Yeah. So don't tell him.
Uh, yeah, we're not going to tell them. But I think Mets fans would be happy if that's what they ended up getting.
Yeah, for sure. They
Right?
absolutely would. So speaking of the Red Sox, I think that they now have starting depth that could compare or even surpass the Diamondbacks. They signed Walker Bueller. They also signed Patrick Sandoval. So they've added to their depth. They now have a rotation that could have Garrett Crochet, Tanner Houck, Brian Bello, Cutter Crawford, Walker Bueller, Sandoval when he gets healthy, uh, Whitlock and Giolito when they get healthy. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot of depth there.
that's pretty solid. And even if Bueller never gets, I think we talked about him last episode, never
Mhm.
reaches his first couple seasons in the Dodgers, like at that stratosphere, he's still a pretty good player. I think it's he could be the number 2 in that rotation, I think, behind Crochet, potentially, if everything goes according to plan. And yeah, that's a great rotation.
Mhm.
We'll see what happens. The Giolito, that one's kind of a red flag for me. Like, on paper, he is good, but I'd have to wait and see if he's figured things out again and which
Yeah,
version of him is pitching.
I
Uh,
agree.
but yeah, that's good for the Red Sox. They made some moves, tried to hang with the Yanks in the NL East.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah,
Because they're probably the leaders there right now, but they have a lot of good pitching, and the Red Sox will have some good hitting that is coming up too. I mean, Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell are their top two prospects, both of whom didn't get traded to get Garrett Crochet and should be in the majors at some point in 2025. So Red Sox are kind of a fun team right now.
yeah, and that was a strong part of that trade was that they kept those guys and got Crochet. So that was a coup, I think, for them. And Christian Campbell is someone that he rose really hot and quickly
Hmm.
last year and
Yes, he did
jumped and had a crazy year. So
for a
be
reason.
interesting to see if he continues that.
For a
Yeah,
reason, he did. Yeah.
yes.
All right. Real quick before break, Andrew McCutcheon goes back to Pittsburgh. Trevor Williams goes to the Nationals. Sean Manaea goes back to the Mets. Jock Peterson to Texas. Eloy Jimenez to the Rays on a minor league deal. Do any of those stand out to you?
I mean, not really. It'd be fun to see McCutcheon just retire with the Pirates. From a fantasy perspective, nothing too exciting there, to be honest. Jock
Yeah,
Peterson has some pop. He could be well, actually, I was going to say he could be your fourth outfielder, but I wonder if he's just going to DH.
that's possible. Maybe play first since they traded
But
Nathaniel Lowe.
first, yeah, yeah. Um,
A trade we'll talk about here in a second, but just another slew of signings there. And I think, I don't know. I mean, Manaea going back is probably
yeah,
fine.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the Mets once again that he's a middle rotation guy, and they saw enough of him and
yeah.
would like him back.
So let me ask you this then, Nate. Do you see any reason um, to be excited about Eloy Jimenez? It's a minor league deal, right? He's not even. It's not a major league deal at all. He has to prove himself, all that stuff. But he's going to Tampa Bay, a place that is, pretty good with this kind of stuff. But just, I mean, fell off the map at one point. Was one of the top hitters in the game for a season or two there, and then fell off the map pretty hard. So, are you at all interested in Eloy Jimenez in Tampa
No,
Bay?
no, I don't think so. He just the fall off was so big,
Mhm.
and the past few seasons he has been so bad. I don't. That does not. No, I would
So,
pass on that.
so the fall off here in 2022 and 2023, he hit 16 and 18 home runs respectively, hit 295, 272, and was a near two WAR player according to Fangraphs in 2022, and then went down to point 0.6 in 2023. Not great defense, so he has to be able to hit the ball. Last year, he hit 238, 6 home runs, and I mean, it wasn't a great offensive season, but nothing on the surface really changed. He didn't walk a whole lot less. He didn't strike out a whole lot more. He's only at 20%. And he's only 28 years old, or going to be 28 years old soon, coming off of the only season of his professional career where he had a WRC plus that was under 100. So last year, the fall off was huge. And
Hmm.
redraft, don't draft him. Don't even come close to drafting him in redraft leagues. That's not what I'm saying. But is there a reclamation project there? I've been grappling with that one because he did fall off really hard. But maybe he can make a comeback.
I mean, he's also been injury prone,
Hmm.
which that's another part that worries me. Um, but yeah, I guess it's not. It there's a small chance that could happen. he's had enough success at the major league level that he could have more success,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
For
we'll
sure. All
see.
right. We will see. Yeah, that's kind of don't draft him in redraft leagues. I can't say that enough.
No.
If you take anything from this segment, do not draft him in redraft leagues. We are going to take a quick timeout, though. Once again, my name is Trevor Hooth, joined by Nate Kosher, and you are listening to Coffee Talk, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth, joined, of course, by Nate Kosher. We've talked signings. Let's talk trades, Nate. There have been a few trades. Now, we mentioned already the Naylor to Arizona trade. A couple other ones that have come across that are, I think, pretty interesting. We mentioned Nathaniel Lowe. He went to the Nationals for Robert Garcia, a relief pitcher. So those are two major leaguers now switching teams. What do you make of that trade? Do you like Lowe or Garcia any better now with their new club?
I was reading up on Garcia, and it sounded like, uh, based on some of the things that they've seen, um, Texas liked him a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why they wanted to make the change. If you look at his stats, though, just on the surface, it's not that exciting. He hasn't he hasn't done that much, but apparently they liked what they saw. Um, I should see if I can find that. I can't. I had that saved, and now I can't find it. But
I mean, teams
um,
will do that though. They'll see data or something they like or something they think they can fix and turn around and maybe take a chance on a guy. And obviously, they didn't feel like they needed Nathaniel Lowe on their team anymore. So um, maybe that's what they did.
yeah,
They found a guy they like, take a chance on him.
right. And Nathaniel Lowe, he's okay. You know, I think he's probably hit 20 home runs in the season, hasn't he?
He has.
Um,
He's a guy that is my like go-to first baseman when I don't get one of the top guys and I end up punting. I will take Nathaniel Lowe religiously. He 2022 he had 27 home runs. That's the only time he's topped 20 home runs. But he's generally been around a 3-WAR player the last few years. 17 home runs in 23 and hit 16 home runs last season. But a 12% walk rate. He doesn't strike out a ton. If you hit 260 and can get double-digit home runs, I think that's fine for your first baseman. If you're not getting one of the top guys. So he's a guy that in redraft leagues I like to go at if I'm not going to plan to get one of the top first basemen. So um,
yeah,
yeah.
you're right. He's had some success, and
Mhm.
I was looking more trying to find my Garcia fact, but um, he was first in Nats relievers and strikeouts per 9 innings, second in strikeouts, and fourth in innings. But what's interesting over last year, he had a 4.22 ERA, but his expected ERA was 2.53. So he was unlucky, basically. And the Rangers, maybe that's the kind of stuff they were looking at when they said, "Oh, this guy can be good." And in Texas, I think last year they they had a few different people close for them. So if he puts together strong season, I mean, he could probably be in the mix for saves. He's been primarily a setup man, but I would think that's someone you could look at for saves, actually.
Um, let's see.
Kirby Yates is gone.
Yeah. So according to Roster Resource, looks like they have Derek Law or Jose Ferrer um, in the closer role, at least entering the season. They also got Evan Reiford in the Rule 5 draft. Not that he's going to get saves, but just he's there. Uh, just something I happen to notice as I'm scrolling down. But yeah, I don't see his name on their roster resource though, so he could. I don't know. I don't know where he's going to get used, but Oh no, I'm on the wrong roster resource. I'm so sorry. I'm looking at Washington. That's where I'm getting confused.
Oh, I was gonna say
Excuse me. Yeah, no,
I was I was confused myself there
yeah, call me out.
for a
Tell
second.
me I'm not that smart. Roster resource does have him in a closer role. He or Jacob Webb could be getting save opportunities according to roster resource.
Oh, Jacob Webb. Okay,
And it's for the Texas Rangers this time. I got it right, Nate. I got there
the Ranger.
eventually.
Yes. So, anyways, that is someone probably that is mildly interesting. Once again, if these are the types of guys you're waiting for in the
Mhm.
end of your draft or toward the end, Garcia might even be available. Actually, he probably is available on the waiver wire, unless maybe you're in a holds league. But that's someone to stash away in the back of your mind, perhaps.
Mhm.
The bigger opportunity, maybe you could be getting some saves.
Yeah, so I was looking, if you couldn't tell, Nate, at the Nationals roster resource.
Yes.
Um, they have a really interesting lineup right now. CJ Abrams, Dylan
Let me go
Cruz,
look at
James
that.
Wood, obviously all studs, people you want on your team. Then you have Nathaniel Lowe, Josh Bell, Luis Garcia, Keibert Ruiz, Jose Tena maybe getting time at third base. Um, Jacob Young is also in their starting lineup. He's a guy if you need speed. But that third base could get really interesting because you do have Jose Tena. You have Trey Lipscomb, who got some time there last year. You also have maybe Andres Chaparro if you want him to get some time. You definitely have Brady House and Caden Wallace, both of who could be vying for reps at the big league level at third base. So that third base job could get really interesting because you're not going to dethrone Luis Garcia. You're not going to get CJ Abrams. And at this point, you've kind of invested in Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Bell, at least for this year. So um, if you don't play well at third base, there could be somebody right there to take your spot. And there's a lot of really solid sounding options. Again, Tana, Lipscomb, House, Wallace. I mean, anybody could be getting these third base reps.
You're right. The Nationals, now looking at their lineup, cumulatively as a whole, it is interesting. They seems like they could be perhaps if these young studs produce right away, as we had talked about. We think Cruz and Wood are going to be pretty darn
Mhm.
good. They could be feisty.
Sneaky.
Yeah, sneaky, exactly.
They could be the Royals.
That's a good. Yeah, that is a good. Speaking of comparisons,
Yeah, they could be. It's a fun little lineup, and they have more coming up. Again, their pitching staff. You have Gore, Jake Irvin, Mitchell Parker, Michael Soroka. If he bounces back, DJ Hers is interesting. They just signed Trevor Williams. I think Josiah Gray is going to be out all year, but you have him back in the mix. Eventually, and again, you have guys who are pretty close that could be up and help you pretty soon. It's just I mean, Robert Hassel just got added to the 40 man. Um, as an outfielder, as a contact oriented outfielder, you still have Cade Cavalli who could pitch, um, Jackson
yeah.
Rutledge, Cole Henry. I've never been super high on those guys, but they could probably provide you some innings. Andrew Lara, I think, is a long term rotation arm, but he's gotten some helium at different points in his career. There's just some very interesting names that could be coming out of Washington, I think.
And you said the Trevor Williams re-signing, not earth-shattering for fantasy purposes, but he was pretty good last year. I picked him up in one of my leagues, and in over 13 starts, he was 6-1 with a 2.03 ERA,
Mm-hmm.
which if you can, uh, you know, push that out the rest of the season, that's pretty solid. So we'll see if he is probably a fourth or fifth starter, but in a deeper league, that might be a streaming option, I guess.
Yeah, he might be. All right. So another trade happened just today, the day we record the podcast. Obviously, not the day you're listening to it. That would not be today. We don't know what's going to happen on that future day that you're listening to this podcast, but we appreciate you listening. Thank you. Anyway, on the day we record the podcast, news popped out. I think it was today at least. There was another trade between the Marlins and the Cubs. Vidal Brujan for Matt Mervis. Um, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's also not. It's odd to me for both sides. Um, I don't know. Do you have any strong feelings about it, or do you want me to keep going?
I was just gonna say it would be. I'll let you keep going in a second. I was just gonna say it would be. It would have been more interesting a few years ago.
Hmm.
That
Yeah,
that
when they
was
were
my
both
thought.
prospects. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
when you get a Zach Gallen for Jazz Chisholm type trade.
right. When they were high prospects
Hmm.
expected to be something, but yeah, I guess
So
it's like go ahead. What do you
yeah, I
think
mean,
about it?
for me, you have Matt Mervis, who's a first baseman only, probably right now. Your first base position probably should be open. I mean, you got Jonah Bride there. You might have Davison De Los Santos. Um, so Matt Mervis could be getting at bats there long term. The lefty hitter, and there are only righty options for the first base spot in terms of Jonah Bride and Davison De Los Santos. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that probably means that Davison De Los Santos doesn't have an automatic path to the big leagues this year,
Hmm.
like you probably thought heading into the offseason. Or maybe Jonah Bride. I don't know. Jonah Bride was pretty good though. I think he probably takes everyday first base out of the gate. But um, I don't know. That's just I don't know how to read that for first base for Miami. I also don't know how to read it for infield for the Cubs. Um, do you have Vidal Brujan be a bench infielder, a bench utility man? I mean, he's a switch hitter, which helps. Do you have him move around? What do you do with Matt Shaw now? Because it seemed like Matt Shaw was in line to get everyday third base reps in Chicago, and now
Hmm.
maybe not. Maybe Vidal Brujan gets them. Maybe you put him somewhere. Dansby or Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner might play some third. I don't know. I feel like both ways you're just taking at bats away from these young guys who theoretically should be ready for their chance.
Yeah, that when you I think you're right because I mean at this point he's nothing more than probably a utility, a good he could be a good utility piece, right? But
Mhm.
um he's potentially stealing starts from some other people you're probably more interested in fantasy wise. But I realized talking about the Cubs, I don't think we talked about Cody Bellinger to the Yankees. I think that might have happened right after we recorded our last episode. And so I was
Hated the
thinking, oh,
trade.
he played first base for the Cubs. That's what made me think of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Did
hated
not
it
love the trade for the
for
Cubs.
yeah,
What?
okay. The return, yeah.
Yeah. It was a weird return. It was a very weird return
It was a
for me,
Cody.
but
It was a
Cody
Cody
Petit. Yeah.
for
We did talk
Cody
about that because you
trade.
brought up the stat that it was Cody for Cody.
Okay.
So
How soon I forget with the
yeah.
holidays.
Yeah. I think I had the same take though. It was still weird, but yeah, it's. I think that trade, Matt Mervis for Vidal Brujan, is probably good for both organizations in terms of adding depth, but I think it hurt several people's fantasy value heading into the 2025 season.
Yeah, that's probably the headline from that trade.
It's
From
kind of
our
like that
perspective.
Jonathan India Brady Singer trade where we were like, I mean, good for the teams, but maybe not for the fantasy value of the players.
Yeah, bad for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I still think Spencer Torkelson's taken the biggest hit of anybody we've talked about fantasy value wise tonight.
I'm
I
with
think
you. Yeah,
I think I have to cut him. I don't want to. I want to take a chance on his 30 home run upside, but I think he might not make the cut.
I'm gonna go after this. Try to salvage a 25 cents on a dollar trade. See if I can get something for him.
Yeah, we'll have to see, man. I mean, maybe he can take the DH spot. I don't, maybe his bat plays. If his bat plays, he'll
Yeah,
find a spot in the lineup, but it just is right now. It looks like you're going to get a lot of Glaber and Colt Keith. Because the thing is, if you really wanted to, you could probably have Glaber play shortstop above Trey Sweeney or Javi Baez, keep Colt Keith at second, and still have Spencer Torkelson play first. You're not completely shut off to Spencer Torkelson getting at bats. It's just if he doesn't hit, then you're probably going to see a lot of
they can adjust.
Sweeney. Yeah, right. A lot of Sweeney and Torres up the middle with Colt Keith at first base.
Yeah, Torkelson. it definitely muddies the water up for him, and perhaps this was also somehow related to the success the Tigers had. Surprise at the end of the season where they made the playoffs and went on a little run. That probably attracted Torres and raises the expectations higher next season, right? So
Mhm.
Torkelson,
I mean, it's
if
been
all
all
of that hadn't happened, maybe he would have been safe to just figure things out.
Mhm. It's been all pitching so far, but the Tigers have been a place the last few years where guys can go on a 1-year deal and, improve their stock and help, jumpstart their career. Look at Jack Flaherty, look at Michael Lorenzen. And now, I
Hmm.
mean, not that Gleyber Torres is in a place that those two were in terms of value, but he didn't get the money he thought he should. So maybe he comes to Detroit, they help him, he turns it around, and all of a sudden he's, the player he was supposed to be as a prospect. Because I think he was at one point a number one prospect in baseball, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so.
Although when I think about the top prospects of that general era, doesn't look great, man. I remember Andrew Benintendi being one. I remember Yoan Moncada being one. I don't know if Glaber got that high, but
Yeah, I mean, those are guys that had one or two good seasons, but not what you want from a top prospect.
right, yeah, that was crazy. But either way, I'm interested in what happens with all that. There's been a lot of moves that happen that kind of really splash how the lineups could shake out in Detroit, in Chicago, in Miami, and even in Boston with their rotation. There could be a lot of different ways that the puzzle pieces fit together, and that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe throughout spring training as you get closer, even with the moves that still happen. We mentioned Pete Alonso's still out there. Alex Bregman is still out there, just to name a couple of guys. And there's still other guys out there who will come in and take a spot that you think is open right now for a prospect. And Nate, those things happen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to see where Alonso's going to sign as the offseason progresses. It's been a good offseason with some, I mean, unexpected things happen. Some trades that were fun. I think it seems like there's been more trades recently, so
Mhm.
we'll have to see. And the other thing, Trevor, this is our last recording of 2024.
Oh
So
my
next time we
gosh.
speak, it will be 2025. That much closer to baseball.
Podcast with you next year. Ha 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 ha.
Yep.
Well, as the year wraps up, Nate, want to thank our listeners one more time. We appreciate you guys listening. Without you listening, we're just talking into the void, which I'm sure we would be happy to do, but we appreciate you guys listening and letting us do this
Yeah.
podcast. And of course, thank you to Nick and everybody else at Pitcher List for allowing us to put this on. Adam Howe, of course, our great podcast manager. So, um, again, just thank you to everybody who allows us to do this, from the staff at Pitcher List to the listeners. And 33 episodes in the books, and we will have more to come this off season. Nate, always appreciate talking to you here on the podcast. For Nate Kosher, my name is Trevor Hooth, and this has been episode 33 of Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network.